You want to just kind of first by telling us, I don't really know like how the project started or anything like that. You want to just give us kind of the elevator pitch of where this came
Yeah,
from?
sure. Yeah. Sure. So I've been, doing stuff VR for the last 6 years. I started working with High Fidelity as a as a homeroom greeter, right? And then from there, worked with a number of other VR companies, including being the U.S. sales manager for Pimax VR. But most recently, about I don't know, 9, 10 months ago, 11 months ago, I was managing a company that did a lot of publishing, mainly in the real estate market. And I was sitting there looking at these magazines and I was thinking to myself, man, like, you go to the stores nowadays and there are no gaming magazines. They don't exist, let alone exist in a niche market like VR, at the time. So I thought, you know what, let's just see if there's any interest in this. And I put a little tweet on Twitter saying, hey, I'm thinking of making a physical magazine about VR. And the tweet did very well, and so I just decided to run with it. And I made a Patreon before I even had an idea of what the magazine was going to be called or anything. And that first month we got up to 62 Patreons, and I was like,
That's
oh
awesome.
shoot, man! Now we have to do this magazine. Like now I have to do it. So then the pressure came on, but luckily, the cool thing about it is I made it a community-driven magazine. So all the content in the magazine is only by other content creators, that are in the space, right? Or people who just have a passion for VR that just want to share something about VR they like, or studios who are working on something new and innovative that maybe don't get, the recognition or have no other outlets to get the recognition, So we decided to just do a physical magazine. We offer it digitally as well, but there's something really cool about holding a tangible magazine and seeing a bunch of people in the space, and being able to hold on to that and reference it. So yeah, so we just started doing it, and now we're just hitting issue 4. Comes out in a couple weeks, and it's been a blast, man.
Yeah, well, congratulations so much on your success so far. I think probably all of us have really enjoyed watching you guys get this off the ground. And by the way, for anyone watching on Twitch, the magazine itself is right here. Woodrow, I don't know if you want to kind of get a close-up of that real quick so people can see. But it's awesome. And one of the things that's been most exciting to me watching you is like, in a lot of ways, you have like the exact opposite strategy as we do. Like our strategy was like, okay, we're going to build a website and we have a VR app and it's a platform and we want to be like kind of like LinkedIn, etc. And you were like, no, like just write the stories down, put them on paper, print them out and send it to people and they're going to love it. And you're totally right. So it's like really inspiring to see you be successful at that. I really just have 2 questions. The first is, do you think there is something about the pandemic that made people this especially successful and looking for kind of an opportunity to connect with each other over something?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird when we first started the first issue was right at the beginning of the pandemic, and when we first started it, there were a lot of cities and districts and areas that weren't even allowing mail. Like we couldn't even mail these out if we wanted to, But the whole reason behind it, was kind of getting the community a little more together. I mean, there are so many people, like I said, they're not journalists, right? They're just people who love VR and enjoy VR, and to be able to create a community where people can come and put their words and then see their words in physical form. I mean, there's nothing really cooler than, holding an article that you wrote, and knowing that there's people out there that are also reading it and hopefully enjoying it. But yeah, I think the pandemic in a way has helped us. I think it caused a lot of people to kind of, they're stuck at home, kind of slow down a little bit, and maybe people who couldn't spend that much time in VR, once the pandemic hit, they spent tons and tons of time in VR and they were just starting to, maybe burn out a little bit, but be able to sit back and look at something and kind of just refresh yourself and, if maybe find an article about something you weren't aware of and get excited about VR again, I think is great.
Yeah, totally. And I think it can be kind of like a reality check for all of us. It's like, yeah, the promise of VR is enormous and unlimited, but sometimes it's just nice to hold something, physical. It's good not to lose sight of that, I think.
It's going to be great. Think like 2-3 years from now, right? You go back in there and you look at these articles and you see the first interview with, the guys from Gorilla Tag or whatever the case may be. And you're like, shoot, man, look how far we've come. You know what I mean? And it's
Totally.
not just lost and, lost on the internet somewhere. There's, I think that's the nostalgia of like Nintendo Power and those magazines that people still hold on to now, is to go back and be like, oh my God, like I remember when this happened. How crazy is it that now we're in virtual reality, right? 10 years ago, we were just playing on our PS2. So, it's pretty great.
Mm-hmm. And I'd love for this to be a casual chat, so I'll just ask one more question. That is, can you give us like some tips or tricks, if any come to mind, in terms of growing your community? I feel like you've been really good at that.
So I mean, we just try to constantly be putting stuff out, right? And it's hard. It's really hard when you're doing a magazine that's bi-monthly, right? So I mean, we'll go a few days without, or a few weeks without any content coming out that's relative to our magazine at all. But I'm trying to constantly be on Twitter and be in contact with everyone else, right? I'm not trying to get them to see what we're doing. I'm trying to find out what they're doing. And the cool thing about people, I think in general, is they love to talk about themselves. So I think by asking those questions and saying, hey, I heard you're working on this, or I heard you've been playing Beat Saber and you're really good at it. Hey, it would be so cool to be able to sit down and talk to you and kind of hear, and then that can, convert over into a magazine article, or not, but it converts over to someone knowing that like we appreciate what they're doing and we notice it. And, hopefully they reciprocate that in the future, by subscribing to a magazine or writing an article. So.
Totally. And in that light, I think you and I have talked about this before, but something that's been successful for us and other people we interview, I wonder if it's important for you guys as well. Like, a big part of our growth loop is having people that come into the space resharing back to their communities. Is that kind of a way,
Sure.
part of the way you've grown as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the cool thing about it is, we have a 60-page magazine, and a lot of the articles in it are independent devs and smaller studios that are jacked to be in it, right? So they share it with all of their people. So, this next issue, Thrill is going to be on the cover, and we have a big, nice 3-page spread interview with him. And we also have, some other stuff from Vertigo Games that's going to be in there, and a few other things. And all this stuff, all their social outlets are going to share it as well, right? And, you get someone like Thrill who has 360,000 subs. You capture 1% of that, and that's great. I mean, that's worth the time and the effort and the energy to get it all put together. So it's really utilizing that, because, people like to share your stuff, but they like to share it more if it has something to do with them, right? Obviously. So,
Totally.
I think we've been a little lucky in that regards, because if someone's in if someone's in the magazine, they're really likely to kind of advocate for it, subscribe, get their family to buy a magazine, get their friends to buy it, and that sort of thing. So, how that could translate into, what's going on here at Spatial Ape or just in VR in general, I'm not quite sure, but it's worked really well for us.
Yeah, and I think that plays into to something I saw on Twitter recently. I can't remember who said it, but they were talking about MetaHuman, that new Unreal Engine tool for creating avatars, and like everyone's downloading that, trying it, and they're posting screenshots back to Twitter and whatnot. And partly that's because it's an impressive tool, but the point that he made on Twitter was it's also because they see themselves in the product. And I think that's like plays into people's natural psychology of wanting to share something. And I think, seeing yourself in the magazine, it's kind of the same principle.
Yep. And I whenever I talk to someone about it, we bring up the same thing. And I remember being in high school a long time ago. And they had us write poetry in our English class, right? And we submitted it online to this poetry.com. And what this company would do is they'd say, hey, your poem was great. We want to put it in a book, right? Well, little did you know, everyone's poems were great, right? They were just putting everyone's poems in a book and then charging you $60 for a book. But people would buy it because they like to see their self, shown in that book. So, I think there's some validity behind that. Like you said, people, it's cool. It adds, if you're a small studio and you see yourself in a magazine, or you see yourself on Upload VR, right, or VR Focus, one of these large magazines, it builds some sort of validity. It also builds confidence, and it gets you it gets not only other people excited in your project, but it gets you excited, right? Because you can see that feedback. And I think it's just a win-win.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think our projects are kind of riffing off of the same thing there in a lot of ways, which I love. Cool. Will someone else want to jump in? Have any of you guys been in the magazine? I can't remember. Thomas, Robert? No, not yet. We're gonna do it next issue, I think. We said we were gonna do it. I said I was gonna get him something this week, and then I made some screenshots from the Twitch stream, and they were just like, look bad, and I was sad about it.
That's fine. We tell people all the time. I mean, we're bi-monthly, so we try to give people enough time to produce content. But if you're working on any projects at all, or if you just you spend a lot of time in here or in any sort of application, and you love it and you want to share, you want people to know more about it, you don't think it's getting the love it deserves, and you want to write something. I mean, we want everyone to feel like they can be part of the community and part of the magazine, right? And all you have to do is just shoot us an email and say, hey, I want to write about this, or I'm working on a project I think is cool, and we'll put it in there, because there's so many people out there that are working on so many cool things, and unless it gets retweeted by someone with a larger audience, they just go unnoticed.
Sure. That's great.
So I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but ballpark are you really in the number of issues you usually sell in one?
Sure. So right now, with this newest issue coming out, there's going to be about 1,200 physical issues. So we send independently through Patreon, right? But we also are sending to VR arcades, right? So VR arcades will put them next to their booths. That way when people are waiting their turn, or family members are sitting there, kids, they can sit and flip through and maybe recommend to the arcade, hey, this game looks really cool. And then the arcade can use that information to decide if they should license that game out or not. So they're utilizing it like that. And then Patreons, and then of course we do digital, and digital doesn't make up a large percentage of our base, but it is there. You got to remember, we're doing everything bi-monthly, so all the content we come out with, we try to make sure it's not super irrelevant, right, by the time the magazine comes out, because you have all these online sites putting out stuff all the time, which is why we try to get kind of just exclusive interviews with the devs on a little more behind the scenes, right? I mean, everyone knows that, Star Arcade came out with Space Slurpees a couple weeks ago, but not everyone knows like the journey, that they took to get there, and the problems they had with that, and that sort of thing. And I think there's a lot of interest in that sort of thing. I think people like to see, hey, if these two guys, just jumped right into it and were able to make this game, I mean, maybe it's something I can do,
That's awesome.
But yeah, so about 1,200 physical issues. And then we have digitals going out. We're hoping to see that scale up, because if you know anything about any print at all, your pricing is always dictated by bulk and quantity, right? And because we print a lot, we're doing it on kind of a more expensive paper, because we use a size that isn't very used. We copied like the same type of sizing Game Informer used, so it's a much wider magazine. And then we just got rid of these 3 staples here, so all the new issues are gonna be perfect bound, right? So we can have words on the side so people can stack them up and see all the issues. So with this, we need to hit realistically 2,000 units going out before we get a next discount in pricing. So, and we're shipping these worldwide, right? And I don't know if you guys have ever sent a magazine to the UK, but whew, $12. It's more than the magazine to ship it there. So
crazy. Interesting.
Yeah.
Has your experience with Patreon been good? Are you glad that you picked that as your platform?
Yeah, I mean, they do take a nice cut.
What's their cut
for themselves? I can't remember. 3%, 4%, something like that. But for the subscription style that we do, it was really the only way we could figure out how to do it. That was relatively affordable. Because it's just, if you guys don't know the VR Trend team, it's just me and one other guy, Cody, who couldn't be here today. He has a 1-year-old, so he's a busy guy. It's just the two of us, and we started this. We literally started VR Trend a week after, Cody lost his job due to COVID. And then I followed suit shortly after, when our business, the publishing company, decided to move everything to Canada. because of the pandemic. So, we've been just really trying to bootstrap it the best way. And now we've found better ways to do the subscription tier, but we're so embedded in Patreon, it would be so hard to switch it over, and we'd probably lose a lot of subscribers in that transition. So we're going to stick with it for now, but it's pretty easy to work with for the most part.
I got a question. When is your are you gonna do like a plugin for VR metaverses to host your magazine stands?
Okay, so this is something that we've been working on. We got a magazine working like in VR chat very poorly. But we're still trying to figure out the best way to do that, because it'd be so cool to even have a web XR experience where people can just load in a room, right? See the magazine, flip through the pages, and just view it all digitally, with maybe some additional features. But I don't think we're there yet. I think we need to. We're trying to concentrate on just building the magazine base as it is first, until we can generate any sort of income. That way, we have, money to put into making new and exciting things. So hopefully soon. Awesome. We're still very much in the startup phases. So
nice.
Are you thinking about maybe shipping out little devices? Like last time, we had someone here who was working with audio, and he had something like audio straps, and he said those things can be just distributed quite easily. Do you think about, like, if some tool or new development is there that just needs something 3D printed, do you think about physically also attaching something to ship it? Because anyways, you're in the real world. You could attach something and also get into
Are you talking about like adding things in with the magazine that can be sent to someone to use? So we already have worked on printing vinyl skins for VR headsets that we could just, because they're flat already, right? We can just slide those directly in the magazine. And then every issue we always throw random stuff in random bags. Last issue we threw in keychains. Before that we threw in some gaming keys into random bags. So we're trying. The problem we run in with that is anything we add adds a dramatic amount to our shipping international, right? And we don't want to. The whole, our whole thing is we don't want to exclude international from anything, right? So if we do something like that, we need to make sure that it will work for international as well. So what we're working on now is we're actually talking with 2 companies in the UK that can probably do our printing and distributing from there. That way we'd send them the file, they'd print it, distribute it from there. Shipping would be less, shipping times would be less. The hard thing is it's really hard for us to keep track of just kind of the QA,
Have you been doing shipping by hands right now? Oh, sorry.
What was that?
Have you been doing shipping manually right now? Like, what are the logistics of sending out 12,000?
We're going through a shipping company, right? So what they'll do is we'll send them a shipping list in an Excel spreadsheet. They'll go through and tag them all, and then they give us a good rate on it and send it out. But I mean, it's our biggest hurdle right now is international shipping, which is something we don't want to obviously get rid of, because our international customers make up probably 40% of all our subscribers. So.
So one question from my side, do you write articles yourself, or is it all self-publishing from the authors?
Yeah, so I had a few articles that I wrote that were in issue 2. If there's space for it, then we'll write it. Or if there's a studio that doesn't have someone that they haven't given any keys out yet, and there's not really a lot, we'll go through and write something based on either an interview with them or just what we can get from their press kit and from early looks at the game, and we'll generate something. But for the most part, we haven't had much room in the last issue, and I don't think we'll have room in this issue. Cody does do a little bit of writing when we do like the hardware spotlights and stuff like that. He'll go through and write those up. I know he's doing a write-up in this current issue as well. But yeah, he's a much better writer than I am. I mean, if you guys go back through my tweets, I don't think you want me writing a magazine. So.
And when I'm thinking of magazines, for example, I think something that is still quite interesting, that is WebXR for magazines, like the big magazines that are sometimes using it, where you just use it for augmented reality with your smartphone, for example. Wouldn't that a way for you to do, let's say, a little bit of demoing for bigger magazines that might try out possibilities, and you could demonstrate that with companies together? Like, this is an example how to use XR, WebXR with a printed, thing. So.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think there's still a lot for us to explore, on that front. I mean, we spent so much time trying to bring VR into the physical world that, we haven't spent much time on how to reincorporate the physical version back into, AR or VR. So definitely something, we plan on looking at as we move forward, and things get a little more structured.
I saw on your on your Patreon, how you set kind of a goal. Like, I want this many subscribers to kind of support the project. And I was just curious, I was looking at that, and it's adds up to something like 25 grand a year would be if you hit your goal, I think. Does that sound right?
It depends, right? So I mean, even if you look at our subscriber now on Patreon, it's probably around there. It's just so hard because, like, a lot of people will subscribe for, like, the dollar tier or the $2 tier for a digital version, right? And then a lot of people will just do the non-poster version, which is like $3 cheaper. So it's so sporadic. I think the amount of, like, full pledge Patreons we have is maybe like 30 or 40, right? So it's a small percentage of that. That's making up a portion of that. And really what they're covering is international shipping charges, right? So I mean, right now, as the magazine ships with everything we're putting together, and all the content and everything, it is literally just paying for itself to print and ship. So we're working with advertisers and stuff on this issue, to try to regain some of that capital to make the improvements on the magazine. Like the perfect binding's gonna obviously cost more and that sort of thing, but we don't want it to become stagnant, right? We want to constantly be improving it.
And I guess to that point, like, my curiosity would be kind of, what's your economic plan long term? I mean, how do you kind of take that to the next level where you're actually now able to pay kind of yourself and Cody and have a living wage and, grow it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that would be the dream, right? I mean, we're both still working full-time, gigs and different projects all the time and that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
That would be the dream. So our goal is to first build our base, right? I mean, when you go to advertisers, the first thing they're going to ask you is, how many readers do you have? What's our cost per impression? And when you're like, it's 1,200 people, maybe 1,500, 1,600, but if you count, it's in an arcade, and we can't really predict how many people are coming in and out of these arcades and looking at it. But the cool thing about that's worked in our favor is we know that the people getting the magazine are very interested in virtual reality, right? They are all enthusiasts. There's not, someone who's really not that interested, finding this magazine or walking past it. Most people, know what it is when they order it. So, we have that going for us, but I think for us, it's just building that base. I think once we get up to a large enough reader base, then it makes sense for a company to come in and say, yeah, we'll pay you this much and this much for advertising, right? And then we can recoup some of that money, and then we can start, paying Cody for the 300 hours he spends, putting together the layout for every magazine and that sort of thing. So we'll get there, but we knew when we started this, that it's not a sprint, it's going to take time, and we gotta show people that, we're going to be here for a while, and we got to show them that there's value in it, and that there's people out there that still like this sort of thing, so I think we're still kind of in our proving phase. But yeah, ultimately the goal would be me and Cody could just spend time doing this. We could have some sort of program for the people writing content, right? So they could get a payout for the time they're spending to write an article for our magazine, right? So there's a whole bunch of things we want to do. We're just trying to set that baseline first.
Yeah, awesome.
And we have no idea what that baseline is, right? I mean, we're still just trying to figure out, the most effective way to distribute this and then to market it, right? I mean, there's a lot of people that still will message us and be like, "Oh, I didn't know your magazine was physical," and I think I've tried to do a pretty good job of making sure people know it's a physical magazine. you know. But I mean, there's still plenty of opportunities for growth. I mean, everything we've done has been on Twitter, right? We don't really have an impact on Facebook, on Instagram, very little. You know, so it's kind of exciting that there's still that opportunity out there, but now we got to work on exploring that a little more. Twitter just made the most sense because, if most of you know, I mean, a lot of the VR community is on Twitter, and they're very accessible on Twitter. A lot of the studios and a lot of the enthusiasts. So that was just our idea for start. So
thanks so much for sharing, man.
If any of you guys are interested in, you know, writing, contributing, or if you just want a digital copy to look through and kind of see what we've been working on, you know, just shoot me a Twitter message or shoot us a Twitter message or an email, and we can just send you over a PDF.
And that's at VR Trend Magazine, and your
info
account
at
is...
VR Trend Magazine. Yep, or just at VR Trend Magazine on Twitter, at The Bearded Bard VR.